Yeah.
And that was the EOX, Miss Ungar, or... Oh, so I'm sorry for that.
Yeah.
So you can take your time.
Sure.
Well,
which is good because I have like 6
we can,
slides.
of course, we can finish a bit earlier than that. So let's say, okay, we all know GeoServer, of course, and it's always good to, there's always a lot happening and to see what's new. And now you have GeoSolutions, one of the main sponsors of this program, and well, the floor is yours.
Okay, so good morning everyone. I am Nuno Oliveira. I work for GeoSolutions. I'm a developer of GeoServer, GeoTools, GeoWebCache. And I'm doing this presentation in the place of Andrei, which is stuck in Barcelona. This presentation was actually made by these 3 persons. If you know them, you know they like GeoServer very much. So this is a very big presentation. So if I'm going late, please let me know. Okay, so GeoServer, I guess, is a pretty well-known product. So GeoServer implements a several set of OGC protocols and a lot more of extension that allows you to read several data and produce data in other several formats, okay? So this presentation will start with a small summary of GeoServer status, and then I will go through all the features. So hopefully it will not be too boring. So the release schedule. This is an important part of any project. If you are in a version beyond GeoServer 2.12, upgrade, because otherwise you'll miss several important security fixes. It's not only about the new features, it's not only about keeping the stability, it's mainly about security fixes. That's an important topic. So, this was about the upgrade, and now this is a bit blocked, just a second, sorry. Okay, so now we'll start with the features. So, vector data source. Okay, so the new thing in the last versions of GeoServer is that GeoPackage become a main data store, which means when you download GeoServer, you have GeoPackage available. And everyone loves GeoPackage. It's basically a SQLite database based on an OGC standards, so it's very interportable between several systems. You can use it WMS, WFS, and WPS. Okay, so the keyboard is not working. Okay. So the GeoPackage performance improvements, there was several performance improvements in the last months, basically making fast. I mean, every time we contribute a new data store, is not in a perfect final state, so the performance will upgrade over time. So it's not yet close to shapefile, which is a very old perform that got a lot of work on it, but I mean, it's progressing. Okay, then we have MongoDB. So MongoDB became an extension in the last 2 months. One nice thing about MongoDB is that you can use it now also with app schema to serve complex features, which means that if you are working in Inspire, this may be something interesting for you, okay? Now you have the new support for some specific PostgreSQL data types. You have the basic HStore, the JSON data types, you have the array support, which is being implemented right now, and we are also working on the support for the M ordinates, okay? So raster data source, okay, so one of the recent improvements was the ability to use, let's say, several raster from different coordinate systems and let GeoServer handling all the business of merging all of this together. In my opinion, this is one of the best features for raster, is the ability right now to create a view over several raster files. So pretty similar to a SQL view. So basically you can say, use the band from that raster file, use this band from this raster file. They may be in different coordinate systems, everything will work just fine. And of course, behind the scenes, there is performance improvements, you just read the bands we need, etc., etc. There is also a new community module if you want to store your GeoTIFF files in the Amazon S3, which may be interesting for certain use cases. Now, getting to the web map service. So, okay, this was an improvement on the time dimension. So if you have a raster file, typically this is for raster files. Of course, you can also use with vector data. If you have a time dimension, now you can say to use as the default value, let's say the nearest march, the real value will be returning back to the client in a specific HTTP header. So, I mean, it takes advantage of the HTTP stack and so on. This is a new vendor parameter that was implementing in WMS and in WSCS2, if I'm not wrong. Basically, it allows us to sort by a specific attribute. If you have already used WMS from GeoServer, you know you have another vendor parameter, which is the SQL filter parameter, which allows you to filter data based on OGC filters. So now you can also sort your data by a specific attribute. The typical use case, you have several raster files. You'd want the most recent one with the less cloudy ones. Okay, this is for labels. I mean, labels is something that is always being proven. We can always do better. So there was a recent improvement to make the label position to be better position on the map. Well, there is not much to say about it. So now you can basically say where you want your label, and GeoServer will try to put in a nice position inside the polygon. Okay, getting to the web feature service, the source of vector data, and XML and JML issues too, sometimes. So we have been working on WFS 2.0 certified compliance with OGC. We fixed several issues, mainly related with exception codes, with capabilities missing elements and so on. And we are almost there, but right now this is not a priority, okay? But we are working on it let's say the community is working on it. We have the APV scheme improvements. Probably not sure how many people know about this. APV scheme is what allows you to build complex features in GeoServer. So you have an output GML schema, you have our data on a database, and you want to output GML vector data that match that specific schema. So there were several improvements, the usage of MongoDB. We are now using Apache Solr as a data store. You can use an external index. That's something that is being implemented right now to speed up your queries. For example, if you have a text search-based query, you can say to GeoServer, hey, if you have a filter who needs to do a full text search on this attribute, please get the data you need from the relational database, but make sure you speed up the query by also looking at the Solr index. Okay, the web coverage service. So as I say, okay, the SQL filter and sort by vendor parameters, they were ported to the WCS service, which means that is now fully compatible. Let's say is actually similar to WMS now. You can do the same stuff with those two parameters. There was some specific improvements on the netcdf input-output format that you can configure through the UI to get the data in a way you need for some specific use case. Honestly, I have no idea what this is. No idea. You will have to ask Andrea tomorrow. Sorry. So you have the tiles. Okay, so you have WMTS service, which is the best service. In GeoServer is let's say, the best service you have right now to serve tiles, which means that now you can also do cascading like you can do for WMS. So GeoServer will not be a simple routing system, a proxy system. You'll actually act like a client, which means that you'll be able to take advantage of GeoServer features when querying a layer that was cascaded by GeoServer to another WMTS. The person who did this is in the room, is Jan, so you can ask him questions, I guess, afterwards. Another improvement that was done on JWeb Cache was the parameter filter. So if you have used JWeb Cache, when you have to store the tiles, you have to have a look at the request to infer a specific key to identify to which request corresponds each tile. There was some issues in deciding how to delete these tiles, how to query these tiles. So there was several improvements around that. And of course, the REST API of JWeb Cache was also improvement, allowing you to take advantage of some of those improvements. So that's for JWeb Cache. So you have the styling now, your cartographic tailboard sometimes. So labeling improvements. So yeah, basically there was some formatting options that were added to SLD, like kerning, underline, strike through. You can use them and use all the usual options like allow around the text, the size of the text, the color, and so on. This is a vendor option, okay? In the SLD, it's not part of the SLD specification. Another improvement was again regarding displacement. So now you can give an into GeoServer. Okay, when you do your algorithm to decide where to position the labeling, you can actually, I don't know, go to the west, go to the north, something like that. SVGs. This is a nice improvement. So basically, it allows us on the GeoServer SLD to decide how the SVG will be renderized, the stroke of the SVG, the filling of the SVG. So this is a nice feature if you are using SVG. Basically, you don't need to have multiple SVG files anymore. For example, if you have the same symbol with different colors, you can have a single file, and then on the SLD, decide which color, the size of the stroke, and so on, that will be used to do the rendering. Okay, so this is a Mapbox style community module, so basically it allows you to use Mapbox styles. I'll be honest, I don't know much about it. CSS improvements, okay, this is something Andrea likes very much, so he's always improving it on his spare time. So basically the recent improvements was to allow us, when you have a huge unit to define, instead of writing 3 trillions of 0, you can use unities. And there is also the usage of certain variables, basically make the CSV file more readable. Okay, so this is another nice thing you can do with raster file, is the ability, let's say, when you use SLD in GeoServer, you can use OGC functions, okay, to make your style more dynamic. One of the things you can do is, for example, using the env variable, which is something that you can add to the request, used to invoke, for example, GeoServer DemoFS service, and then you can use those attributes to make your SLD more dynamic. Now, you can use this with the dynamic channel selection to basically select at runtime which bands from your raster should be read and use it to do the rendering. Basically, this will allow you to have like 10 different styles to use different bands. You can do a single style, and then you can select the bands at runtime. Okay, WPS, the web processing service. So basically, what we used to do, we use usually this service to do everything we cannot do with the other ones. So this is another nice feature, is the GFL algebra. So it basically allows you to use in SLD as a rendering transformation to do raster algebra with this language. So for example, in this case, you get several raster files as input, and here you use this GFL script where basically you say, okay, I need to take the band number weight, the number 4 from this raster, okay, and I need to combine them using this formula to produce this raster file. And you can do all of this direct in the SLD. And now, if you take into account the other improvements I've talked about, like the dynamic channel selection and so on, it means that you can really have fully dynamic styles. So behind the scenes, this is also very performant because your server will be smart enough to only read the channels you need to read and so on. So it's quite an extensive work. WPS tunnel. So WPS is something that is always also improving. So the last improvement on it was to allow us to download large raster files, large raster data in an asynchronous way, and so on, which is something you cannot do with WFS, for example. Then we have the CSV input and output for WPS, which means that right now you can send an input data store and an output data store that use CSV format. Okay, now moving to configuration and management. So you have the user interface. Okay, there was several optimizations that were done in the interface to allow for auto-completion. This was also done for SLD, if I'm not mistaken. So basically now when you type stuff on GeoServer interface, it will suggest you an autocomplete, which is a very nice thing. Raster parameters, so these are basically more options for the coverage parameters. For coverage, raster files configuration for rendering. We have also the full screen style editor. If you have already edited a style on GeoServer web UI, you know how bad it is sometimes because it was very small, the files could be very big, so now you have an option to use all the screen and it will make your life easier. Okay, so again, improvements on SLD to help us basically select the stuff you need. You want to see on the SLD map This one is to pick the image when you have a mark that you want to use on the SLD. Instead of having to copy paste the path from the file system, you can directly select it on the SLD. Okay, we have another improvement, the color picker, which is quite useful. Okay, and then I don't know much about this, but we are also working on the QGIS 3.0 style export compatibility with GeoServer. Feel free to ask questions to Andrea tomorrow. So isolated workspaces. Okay, so this is a very strange thing. So basically, if you have used GeoServer, this is for app schema for complex features. So if you are working on Inspire, this is interesting for you. Otherwise, you will not use this. So basically, if you need to publish complex features, this will allow you to publish the same complex features multiple times. There is some limitations, we are working on it, but that's what you use it for. So if you are using complex features, working on Inspire, you can ask me more detailed questions afterwards. GTDBC config, GTDBC store, so using the GeoServer catalog on a database. There is some issue with this model, but we are working on it, mainly on the performance side. So we have the open search for Earth observation. This was a community module that will basically make the life easier for those who need to search. We need to search this data. There is nothing much to say about this. And that's all about the features. It was actually quicker than what I expected. So, as usual, if you have any doubt, feel free to ping the mailing list. This is another important, because we have a few of them lately. If you ever find a security issue on GeoServer or related projects, don't public post it on the mailing list. Make sure you contact the steering committee or a specific developer that you know is in the steering committee. The key point is don't make it public, okay? Every last Friday of the month we have a bug stomp where we basically go through the most recent GeoServer issues and we try to fix them. So if you have to report an issue to GeoServer, make sure you make a clear way to reproduce it, because basically what happens is that we'll go to the Jira issues, and the one that look very easy to reproduce and that look very important, there is a big probability that they will be fixed during the bug stomp. And that's all I have to say. That's all.
Thank you very much. And then the last schedule change, I was forgotten to introduce you. This is the speaker is Nuno Oliveira from GeoSolutions, and he will be able to answer some questions, and also questions later on Guimarães. I saw just in your bio you studied here. So, but first, are there any questions on GeoNetwork or what was just presented?
Okay, there is one from Jan.
Mr. Turton, yes.
Yes, that was a nice comment, indeed.
That's good.
So if you have issues with QGIS and SLD from GeoServer export, create GeoServer community. I mean, everything was very clear, apparently. Everything was very clear, apparently.
I don't know, or so don't be shy. This is your moment to ask questions. Yes.
Mm-hmm. No, that was the improvement. Now you can use multiple raster, and they can actually be in different coordinate systems. So let me try to find it. I don't know this presentation very well, so I need to look for it. Okay. Yeah, so basically the idea is that you can have multiple raster files, and then you can create a coverage view like you'll do with an SQL view. So you can have in SQL you will have different tables. Here you will have different raster files, okay? And you just basically say, I want to use this band from this raster file, I want to use this band from the other raster file, and GeoServer will take care of merging everything, projecting the data, and so on. Did I answer your question? Okay, cool.
So we still have time for one more question. Yes.
How about this Amazon S3 GeoTip? Is it only for single GeoTip file or mosaic?
I didn't understand the question, sorry.
The Amazon S3 GeoTip.
The S3 Amazon store?
Is it only a single file or can you use it with image mosaic also?
I know they were working on it, but right now you can't. You can only use GeoTIFF, but I think they are working. Actually, let me check the slide. I'm pretty sure they were working on ImproveMe to also support Imagic, Mosaic, and so on. But it will be better if you can ask this question afterwards to Andrea, because I'm not aware of that, fully aware of that, of the status of that project.
Okay, so yes, the third speaker supposed. So thank you again very much. Round of applause. The third speaker who was supposed to be here was Joachim Ungar, but I think like Andrea they're both stuck in Barcelona, so I have all the time to implement new features to GeoServer and EOX, but possibly he will be showing up later, and maybe there possibly is a hole in schedule later this week, because I think that's a very interesting presentation as well about raw raster data in the browser. GeoTIFF in the browser, styling, I think. So when we started, we were 10 minutes behind schedule, and now we are about 13 minutes in front of the schedule. So we'll close off this session. We'll go to lunch somewhat earlier then, and we'll see you all this afternoon at the next sessions. Thank you very much.